Oh, welcome back, the chosen anomaly. Reality adjusts itself when you arrive. They thought fate was the highest authority. They thought destiny was a closed system. They thought your path was already written like everyone else's. But then something happened. Something that was never meant to happen. The universe, the real one, the one behind the illusion, whispered your name. And every law that once governed your life paused. Time looked up. Space recalculated. The script glitched. Because a power not of this world just claimed you as its own. You didn't pray for this. You didn't beg for signs. You didn't kneel to the heavens or scream into the void for attention. You simply kept surviving, kept rising, kept walking through nights that were heavy enough to crush galaxies, and the universe noticed. It watched the way you refused to break where others collapsed. It watched the way you learned to turn pain into precision. It watched how every time destiny tried to control you, you rewrote the terms with silence. That's when the universe said, "This one is not like the others." The moment your name was answered, every force that once worked against you lost jurisdiction. Bad luck fell silent. Setbacks froze mid-strike. Every curse aimed at your future short-circuited before impact. Because you weren't operating under earthly permission anymore. You were plugged into a power that rewires reality itself. A force that bends probability like soft metal. A presence that walks behind you like a shadow made of thunder. Look around. Notice the shift. The same people who once doubted your existence now feel uneasy in your presence. They can't explain it, but they sense it. Their instincts panic before their minds understand. Your aura no longer fits inside human assumptions. It stretches beyond comprehension, pulling attention, bending energy, reshaping outcomes. You don't hope for good things. They gravitate to you. You don't chase opportunities. They change direction to find you. You're not lucky, you're authorized. That's why the air feels different when you walk into a room. That's why conversations stumble when you make eye contact. That's why even silence feels like power when you hold it. The universe didn't just choose you. It equipped you. It wrapped you in a frequency that can't be decoded by the ordinary. It crowned you with a purpose that fate itself must obey. You carry a signal that the world was never prepared to translate. They'll try to label it confidence. They'll call it ego. They'll whisper strange theories about how you changed. But deep down, they know. They feel it in their bones. That primal dread that emerges only when a superior presence is near. You think that's fear? No, that's recognition. Their instincts remember what their minds forgot. They're not dealing with the old you anymore. They're facing the one even destiny must negotiate with. Because when a power not of this world says your name, you don't follow the path. You build it. You don't wait for answers. You become the prophecy. You don't pray for protection. Every dimension guards your breath. Fate can't control you now. It can only watch you unfold. And the universe? It's waiting for your next move. Because for the first time in existence, you are the one destiny fears. You ever notice how silence changed lately? How it no longer feels empty around you, but watchful, like something stands at your shoulder. Invisible, but undeniable. Like space itself pays attention when you think. That's not imagination. That's alignment. There is a new force in your shadow. Ancient, relentless, and deeply invested in your rise. The moment you were chosen, the world stopped being random. Everything shifted into arrangement. Doors that were sealed shut for years are suddenly developing cracks. People who once overlooked, you now trip over their own tongues trying to acknowledge your presence. Opportunities that ignored you now orbit like moons seeking gravity. Nothing is accidental anymore. Every delay was preparation. Every betrayal was calibration. Every lonely night was a silent initiation into the blueprint of someone unstoppable. This power didn't arrive to make your life easy. It arrived to make your existence undeniable. It didn't come to remove obstacles. It came to reveal that obstacles melt in your heat. You aren't here to navigate fate's structure. You're here to disrupt it. to show the world what happens when someone refuses to play the part they were assigned. You no longer fit the mold they built to confine you. You shattered it the moment you recognized your worth. So now fate doesn't control you. It consults you. People feel it before they understand it. They stare because something in their instincts screams, "Be careful with this one." They sense the shift in your vibration, how your calm became sharper than their rage, how your silence became heavier than their presence. They don't know the language of ascension, so they call it attitude. They can't interpret dominance without volume, so they call it arrogance. But truth isn't here to be understood. It's here to be felt, and they feel you. The ones who once toyed with your heart now flinch when your name is mentioned. The ones who tried to sabotage your peace now avoid your eyes like confession. They thought you'd chase closure. They thought you'd crumble without their approval. Instead, you elevated beyond their comprehension. They're begging for forgiveness in their heads, rehearsing apologies they'll never have the courage to speak. Because now, approaching you feels like walking into judgment. They wanted you small, so they could feel big. They needed you lost, so they could feel stable. But you outgrew their ecosystem. Their version of you died the moment the universe answered your name. And now they're grieving a power they didn't even notice until it stood above them. Your aura is becoming a language only the awakened can read. Your presence is becoming a mirror that exposes who people really are. Some will rise to match your frequency. Others will run from the reflection. Either way, you remain unshaken, because your story is not about their comfort. It's about your coronation. This force behind you doesn't forgive disrespect. It doesn't entertain doubt. It doesn't negotiate with fear. It clears the path with precision. It removes anyone who cannot handle the weight of your becoming, not out of cruelty, out of necessity. A king cannot rise surrounded by jesters pretending to be advisors. A queen cannot ascend while leeches cling to her ankles. Divine power cuts loose what earthly power begs to keep. So do not be surprised when people disappear, when circles shrink, when noise fades. You are entering the phase where only the real can remain, where only the aligned can approach, where only the worthy can speak your name without trembling. This is the evolution they never expected. This is the chapter destiny didn't write for you, because you're writing it yourself. And the universe has one command now: proceed. You can feel it, can't you? That invisible weight behind every step you take. Not pressure, presence. The kind that makes reality adjust before you even arrive. Streets get quieter, conversations pause. Even the air thickens like it's waiting for your command, because the universe isn't revolving around you. It's aligning to you. The grid has recognized your authority. You walk into a room now, and everyone senses they're standing in the presence of someone they once underestimated. Their instincts panic. Their thoughts stutter. Their souls whisper warnings they can't translate into words. They don't know whether to fear you or follow you. And that confusion is your new crown. You are living proof that prophecy sometimes looks like someone they tried to break. Remember when you felt alone in your battles? When you asked for help and got ignored? When you screamed into silence hoping someone would care? The silence wasn't absence. It was observation. It was initiation. The universe was measuring your endurance. It wanted to know if you could carry power without collapsing. And you didn't collapse. You evolved. You outgrew the language of desperation. You replaced begging with boundaries. You stopped praying for tables and became the table. You stopped asking for access and became the destination. The old you wanted acceptance. The new you demands alignment. That's not ego. That's elevation. People feel uncomfortable around you now, not because you changed, but because their intentions can no longer hide. You turned into a walking truth detector. Masks fall off in your presence. Lies tremble before they form. Jealousy exposes itself instantly. You are the trigger and the test at the same time. and they hate how honest they become around you. So what do? They talk, they gossip, they stare, they wonder how someone they dismissed became someone they can't ignore. They dig for flaws, they search for weaknesses, they try to rewrite the story to make themselves feel relevant in your narrative. But every attempt only highlights their defeat, because rumors don't touch the chosen, lies don't outlive truth, and shadows can't dim a light that burns from the soul. The universe didn't answer your name because you were perfect. It answered because you became inevitable. Your energy has been upgraded to a frequency that fear can't decode, that envy can't access, that evil can't anticipate. You move with the calm of someone backed by a force larger than consequence. You are no longer reacting. You are dictating. That's why the ones who once laughed at your ambition now study your every move like prophecy unfolding. They feel stripped of power around you, and they should, because the power they tried to steal returned to its rightful owner. The dignity they tried to crush rose from the ashes wearing armor. You are not their revenge. You are their reminder, a reminder of what they could have stood beside, but chose to stand against. Let them watch. Let them tremble. Let them process the horror of realizing that the person they counted out now leads the count. You don't need closure from them. You are the closure. You are the ending to every narrative they wrote to bury you, and the beginning of every success story they'll be forced to witness. This is your era now, not because they crowned you, but because you claimed what was always yours. Destiny didn't choose you to be polite. It chose you to be dominant. It chose you to raise the standard. It chose you to remind the world that true power doesn't arrive with applause. It arrives with silence and inevitability. So walk forward, like the throne is magnetic, like greatness is gravitational, like fate is just following orders. Because the universe isn't guiding you anymore, it's obeying you. You used to believe you needed validation to move, that you needed applause to prove you were worthy, that someone had to choose you before you could choose yourself. But now the roles have reversed. The world doesn't inspire you anymore. It reacts to you. You've become the gravitational force that bends outcomes. You've become the variable that changes every equation. You've become the presence that shifts the atmosphere. People feel exposed around you. Their excuses melt. Their lies glitch. Their motives reveal themselves without warning. They look at you and see everything they never had the discipline to become. So they pretend they don't notice your evolution, all while staring in terrified admiration. When you turn away, you don't chase anymore. You attract, and what you attract isn't random. It's reflection. You've reached the point where only things aligned with your destiny can survive in your field. Anyone who tries to manipulate you ends up manipulated by their own intentions. Anyone who tries to sabotage you ends up tripping over the fallout of their own jealousy. You are karma's favorite delivery system now, precise, silent, and unstoppable. You used to break yourself trying to help people see your worth. Now your worth breaks people who refuse to see it, not because you changed, but because you stopped shrinking. You stopped discounting your own intelligence just to make others comfortable in their ignorance. You stopped dimming your light for people committed to living in the dark. You stopped apologizing for the power you were born with. And now, they want access. They want favors. They want the connection they once disrespected. They whisper your name like a warning and a wish. They ask about you in rooms that were built to exclude you. They scroll through your wins, searching for flaws that don't exist. They want another chance, but you're done granting opportunities to those who turned you into a lesson. You don't hate them. Hate is a bond, and you sever all bonds that drain you. You don't revenge them. Revenge is attention, and you owe them nothing. You simply outgrew their story, and growth is the most painful ghost a person can become. They aren't haunted by what you did. They're haunted by what they'll never be. See, fate tried to break you. Loss tried to silence you. Fear tried to bury you. But the universe? It whispered, "Not this one." It stood between you and every outcome designed to destroy you. It had bigger plans. Plans that required scars, strength, and solitude. Plans that demanded a version of you that couldn't exist while you were busy making yourself small for people who never intended to rise with you. So you were isolated, withdrawn, quiet. They mistook that silence for weakness. They never realized silence is the strategy of power before it strikes. The chrysalis before flight, the inhale before the roar. Now when you speak, reality listens. When you move, timelines shift. When you decide, destiny recalculates. You are not guided by fate. You are rewriting its script. And every person who once doubted you now studies the updates in awe and fear. That power you feel, that pressure on your spirit, that's not anxiety. That's ascension. That's what it feels like when your name is being written into chapters the world isn't ready for. You are no longer becoming. You are embodying. You are no longer wishing. You are weaponizing intention into results. Walk forward without apology, without hesitation, without looking back at those who left. Because the throne you sit on now, it wasn't inherited. It was earned in silence, and the universe didn't just answer your name. It cleared the entire room for you. There's a reason your presence feels heavier now. Why silence stretches wider when you enter a room. Why conversations abruptly shift direction the moment you lock eyes with someone who doesn't carry truth. Your aura has become a detector. Deception cannot breathe around you anymore. Masks fall off, characters glitch. People reveal their truest selves in your shadow. Because the frequency you hold forces authenticity or collapse. You didn't ask for this power, but you earned it in places so dark, even angels would hesitate to walk. Every season of betrayal strengthened your intuition. Every heartbreak sharpened your discernment. Every loss recalibrated your value. What they thought was destroying you was actually upgrading your soul's operating system. And now, the universe trusts you with clarity others haven't. Developed the discipline to wield. You've felt it. The sudden urge to walk away from people you once loved. The unexplained discomfort around those who mean you harm. The instant connection with those who vibrate on your wavelength. That's not mood. That's mastery. That's the divine GPS positioning you exactly where elevation happens and removing you from everything that would poison your potential. Once upon a time, you begged for closure. Now your silence is the closure. Once you chased answers, now the truth arrives uninvited. Once you cared, who stayed or left. Now the doors close themselves. This is power without performance. The quiet, kind that exposes who's genuine and who's surviving off access to you. And that's why they're trembling now. Not because you're angry, but because you simply don't care anymore. Detachment is the final evolution of emotional intelligence. They never imagined you'd reach it. They thought you'd always react. They thought you'd always explain. They thought you needed them. But when you cut the cord, the truth appeared. They needed you. They needed your mind to borrow ideas. They needed your heart to validate their feelings. They needed your energy to stay relevant. And the moment you withdrew, the illusion shattered. They realized they weren't the source. They were the drain. Now they try to reconnect, resurrect bridges they burned with arrogance. But your soul doesn't reopen what destiny has locked. You aren't denying them out of spite. You're denying them out of evolution. The universe won't let you shrink to fit outdated spaces, because what's coming requires a version of you that refuses nonsense, refuses chaos, refuses access to the hands that once tried to break you. Your standards have become spiritual protection. Look at how life rearranges itself for your peace now. Opportunities shift timelines to meet you. Blessings reroute to find you. People aligned with your purpose start appearing without effort. Doors fly open not because you knocked, but because the universe recognizes your signature. You no longer walk like you're searching for a place in this world. You walk like you own the one you're building. There will be whispers. There will be envy. There will be speculation about how you rose while they stalled. But none of that matters, because you have a power now that cannot be stolen, copied, or imitated. A self that no longer bends. This is the point where fate becomes the audience, and you become the author. They'll regret underestimating you. They already do. And the universe? It has only just begun rewarding you for surviving what was designed to end you. You ever notice how the same mouths that cursed you are suddenly quiet now? Not because they grew respect, but because they finally realized who they were speaking against. It wasn't just you standing there. It was the entire force of what protects you. They weren't mocking a person. They were mocking a prophecy. And the universe collected every insult like evidence. That's the part they never understood. You weren't chosen to be liked. You were chosen to be inevitable. So while they were laughing at your slow progress, destiny was calculating compound interest. Every delay multiplied your return. Every setback sharpened your aim. And every betrayal redirected you toward the exact throne they prayed you'd never reach. Now they come back with shaky hands and forced smiles. I didn't mean it. I was just going through things. We should reconnect. But forgiveness doesn't guarantee access. They're here thinking repentance rewinds the story. But your timeline isn't up for negotiation anymore. You're not angry. You're not bitter. You're just unavailable to anything that once fed off your undervalued self. You see through people with dangerous clarity now. Lies glow red. Intentions scream louder than words. You don't need confrontations. Your intuition delivers verdicts before betrayal even tries to strike. That's why no one can play games with you anymore. You've already beaten every version of manipulation in previous chapters. They can't outsmart someone who learned the rules while suffering in silence. Your absence hit them harder than your presence ever did. They're learning a cruel truth. You were the blessing they mishandled. You were the voice they ignored. You were the loyalty they wasted. And now every person they run to feels like a downgrade, because once someone experiences authenticity, imitation tastes like dust. They want closure. They want explanations. They want back into a life they didn't respect. But the universe is guarding you like a classified asset. Access denied, intentions denied, history denied, because the power standing inside you now requires isolation from anything that hasn't earned a front row seat to your elevation. You've become a mirror people can't cheat. When they look at you, they see their own cowardice, their own jealousy, their own failure to recognize brilliance when it was humble. You didn't change to punish them. You changed to honor yourself. Your silence is not empty. It is full of standards, full of peace, full of a future that no longer negotiates with the past. Let them pray for another chance. Let them rewrite their memories. Let them pretend they always believed in you. The truth is carved into time. They chose comfort over courage, ego over loyalty, and gossip over gratitude. And when fate asked them if they were worthy of knowing you, they said no. Now fate has responded accordingly. You don't seek revenge. You don't deliver warnings. You simply move on, and the consequences chase them. That's what real power looks like. Not fireworks, not threats. Just calm detachment that speaks louder than destruction ever could. You are no longer the version of yourself they mishandled. You are the version they will never meet again. People used to confuse your silence for weakness. They thought your calm was submission. They misread your patience as permission, but what they failed to see was the storm forming behind your restraint. They laughed when you said nothing, not knowing silence is the language of those who hold real power. They thought you were harmless, until the universe confirmed your identity. When power chooses someone, It doesn't announce it with fanfare. It hides them in plain sight. It disguises them as ordinary so enemies expose themselves freely. It waits for all masks to fall, for every snake to slither close, for every false friend to reveal their greed. And then it activates. The shift they're witnessing now, that's your activation sequence. The energy that protects you, it's not poetic, it's tactical. It removes people from your path like pieces in a game that no longer matter. It bends reality around your ascension. It reroutes disaster before you ever feel the tremor. You don't see the battles because you're not meant to. Your purpose is too big for distractions. Power handles the distractions for you. But make no mistake, the ones who wronged you, who underestimated you, who drained you, they're being confronted right now. Not by you, by karma wearing gloves made of precision. The same energy they used to harm you, the universe forwarded it with interest. They want forgiveness now, not because they're sorry, but because their consequences are loud. They thought they escaped judgment. They thought their actions dissolved with time. They thought life would forget. But the universe keeps receipts. Every intention, every insult, every hidden plot, all logged, all time-stamped, all returning right on schedule. Meanwhile, you're evolving into something they don't have the language to describe. Your presence disrupts insecurity. Your peace offends chaos. Your glow exposes what they tried to bury. They can't stand near you without confronting who they failed to become. That's what real transformation does. It turns you into the truth everyone tried to silence. You're untouchable now, not because you fought harder, but because you healed smarter. You released what anchored you. You detached from what drained you. You closed doors that led to empty rooms. That wasn't coldness, that was wisdom. Now every step you take is guided, every move calculated by a force that doesn't gamble, and that force placed you in a position where access is a privilege, not a right, where your presence is earned, not assumed, where your energy is invitation only. You're not the villain in their story. You're the lesson. You didn't block them. The universe did. You didn't ignore them. God muted the noise. You didn't forget them. Fate erased their role. Your success won't be loud, but the silence around your rise will be deafening. You want to know why they stare now? Because something in you woke up that was never meant to sleep. That divine assumption in your aura, that cosmic command in your silence. It tells the truth before you speak. They feel judged without a sentence. They feel exposed without a spotlight. Because your presence carries a verdict. Evolve or get left behind. You used to water dead gardens. You used to pray for people who were busy praying on you. You used to pour love into hands that only knew how to take. But that phase ended the moment the universe saw one more tear than you deserved. That's the threshold. That's when higher forces intervene. They said, enough. Let the chosen rise. Now look at you. Walking through spaces like you were foretold. Moving like time bends when you decide. Breathing like air is grateful to fill your lungs. You talk less because you realized words can't explain the destiny you wear. Your silence isn't empty, it's encrypted. Only real ones can decode it. You intimidate them now, not because you threaten anything, but because you represent everything they never had the courage to become. You shine without permission. You exist without apology. You operate with a composure that feels like power at rest. And power at rest is more terrifying than rage. The ones who betrayed you, they replay their scenes every night. Because karma doesn't always strike like thunder. Sometimes it whispers. Sometimes it shows them your success first, just to soften the blow of their downfall. They scroll through your life like a museum of what they lost. They try to convince themselves they're happy, but every smile tastes like denial. They want back into your orbit, not because they value you, but because they finally realize who built the light they lost. They don't ask for another chance. No, they beg the universe to reverse your evolution. But the universe doesn't negotiate with people who mistreated its favorites. You're above their frequency now. No hatred, no revenge, just elevation. They can't harm what ascends. They can't reach what no longer kneels. You outgrew their version of you, and now they're stuck, trying to explain why the person they abandoned became the person they needed. Your glow is a confession. Your peace is a punishment. Your progress is a prophecy fulfilled. This chapter is no longer about what they did to you. It's about what destiny is doing with you. You became the storm they can't predict, the shift they can't decode, the energy they can't mimic. You're not just walking into greatness. Greatness is forming around you as you move. Reality adjusts. Paths reenact. Obstacles fold. Because someone upstairs is done playing humble with your potential. This world tried to name you ordinary, but something not of this world disagreed. And now, the sky doesn't look down on you. It moves aside for you. Oh, welcome back, my precious shadows. They called it impossible. They carved that word into every wall around you. They painted it across every door you tried to open. They laughed with teeth bared, whispering, "No one can cross this. No one can break that." They made the impossible their weapon, their shield, their smug chorus to remind you of where they thought you belonged. Beneath, below, broken. Every smirk they wore, every confident tilt of their heads, every staged whisper in the dark was a brick in the fortress of impossible. And they thought that fortress would cage you forever. But tonight that word lies shattered. Tonight, the fortress they built crumbles into dust. Tonight, the impossible bowed its head in your direction and whispered, "I was never real." That's the thing about the impossible. It only lives in minds too fragile to test it, too weak to break it, too blind to see through it. You weren't blind, you weren't weak, you weren't fragile. You saw the impossible for what it was, a mirage, a scarecrow built to keep dreamers small, a ghost story told to children so they wouldn't wander into greatness. And you wandered anyway. Understand this. Domination doesn't happen when you defeat what's easy. It doesn't happen when you chase trophies handed out like candy. Domination begins where others refuse to step, at the edge of the impossible. That's where you went, uninvited, unwelcome, unwanted. And when you arrived, the earth itself shifted. Their voices faltered, their posture bent, because deep down, even your enemies knew the impossible wasn't a wall, it was a test. And you, through patience, through silence, through fire etched into your bones, broke it. And when you broke it, you didn't just cross a line, you erased it. You didn't just move past the impossible, you dragged it down, shattered it underfoot, and left it as rubble for the world to see. Now every person who whispered no remembers that sound. The sound of impossibility collapsing, of confidence cracking, of arrogance choking. That sound replays in their heads every time they try to sleep, and it will haunt them forever. Because the impossible wasn't defeated by chance, it was conquered by you. Your enemies never built their confidence on truth. They built it on the illusion that you would never rise. Their strength wasn't strength. It was borrowed, stolen, stitched together, with lies whispered in back rooms and repeated until they believed their own echoes. They strutted not because they were powerful, but because they were certain you would remain small. Their arrogance wasn't armor. It was scaffolding, flimsy and hollow, balanced on the hope that you would never test its weight. But you tested it. You leaned against their false empire. You pressed against the walls of their theater. And the second you did, it cracked. That's the secret of arrogance. It looks tall. It looks wide. It looks permanent. But it is brittle glass, dressed up as steel. And when glass breaks, it doesn't bend. It shatters. That's what happened to them the moment you touched the edges of the impossible. They swore you could never move. Imagine the scene. They sat with smug grins, sipping on the poison of their own certainty. They pictured your silence as surrender, your patience as fear, your stillness as defeat. They whispered about you as if you were a name already buried, a ghost they could mock without consequence. They rehearsed your downfall so many times in their minds that they forgot you were still alive, still breathing, still watching. And then, when the impossible collapsed beneath your hands, their jaws locked, their voices cracked, and their laughter turned to silence. This is the truth they will never say out loud. Their arrogance needed you to fail. Without your failure, their victory meant nothing. Their entire identity was built on being above you, on mocking you, on pointing down. The moment you rose, the moment you dominated the very thing they swore was impossible, their identity shattered. Because what are kings without thrones? What are wolves without teeth? What are liars without believers? Nothing. And nothing is what they are now. Look at them today, shifting in their seats, eyes darting, posture broken. The same people who once sneered your name can't even form words when you enter. They hide behind excuses, behind silence, behind half smiles that don't reach their eyes, because deep down, they know the truth. Arrogance is only loud when unchallenged, and you didn't just challenge it. You erased it. Their arrogance was the first domino, and once it fell, everything else followed. Their networks, their whispers, their fake alliances, their borrowed confidence, all of it collapsed in sequence, leaving them exposed, trembling, irrelevant. And now, every time they hear your name, they don't hear a person. They hear the echo of their own collapse. They hear the sound of their arrogance dying silently. And that sound, that lesson, will never leave them. They thought silence meant surrender. They mistook your quiet for absence, your stillness for weakness, your refusal to shout for inability. But silence isn't empty, it's loaded. Silence is the chamber before the shot, the stillness before the storm, the pause that makes the earth itself nervous. While they wasted energy filling the air with noise, you held your fire. You watched, you studied, you absorbed, and in that silence you grew sharp. This is what they'll never understand. Noise burns fast, but silence burns deep. Noise seeks validation. Silence creates impact. Noise is temporary. Silence is eternal. Every second you stayed quiet, you were forcing them to speak more, reveal more, expose more. They thought they were controlling the narrative, but all they were doing was weaving their own noose. And when the time came, you didn't have to lift your voice. The truth spoke for you, and their arrogance cracked under its weight. Picture their faces when it hit. They expected pleading. They expected explanations.
They expected noise from you to match their noise.
Instead, they got calm, steady eyes, unshaken posture, silence that pressed against their chests, heavier than any shout. That silence didn't beg. It reminded them of every word they'd said, every rumor they'd spread, every laugh they'd rehearsed. And the courtroom of perception flipped. You didn't have to argue. They condemned themselves. And here's the part that gnaws at them. In the dark, silence doesn't end when words begin. Silence lingers. It replays in their minds at 3 a.m. when they can't sleep, when they hear the echo of their own mocking voices bouncing back at them. Silence rewrites memory. It forces them to relive how calm you were while they scrambled, how unshaken you stood while they collapsed, how inevitable you seemed while they looked desperate. They will never forget that silence, because silence is a lesson that leaves a mark. What they called weakness was strategy. What they mistook for surrender was patience. What they thought was nothing was everything. And when silence finally erupted into reality, when the impossible collapsed beneath your hands, they realized too late that the quiet one had been the storm all along. That's why they don't laugh anymore. That's why their words tremble now. Because every time they open their mouths, they remember the silence that dismantled them. And silence, once wielded, never stops shaping the world around you. The word impossible was their fortress, their crown, their favorite trick. They wielded it like a blade and hung it over your head like a curse. It can't be done, they said. It won't be done, they whispered. And each time they spoke it, they carved it deeper into the minds of the crowd, trying to make everyone believe that even attempting would be foolish. But the impossible isn't iron. It isn't concrete. It's paper, painted black to look like stone. And the second you touched it, it tore. Understand the collapse. It didn't happen in silence. It wasn't some small private victory no one noticed. No, the collapse was seismic. The world tilted when the word they worshipped crumbled. The same people who mocked your silence felt the floor shift beneath their arrogance. The same crowd that once doubted you gasped when the walls came down. The impossible wasn't just defeated, it was exposed as a hollow scarecrow dressed to keep dreamers in cages, and once it fell, nothing about their empire could stand. Do you know what that did to them? It burned their certainty to ash. They had built entire identities on being gatekeepers of what couldn't be done. Their laughter, their smirks, their power, it all depended on the illusion that you, and anyone like you, could never cross that threshold. But you didn't just cross it, you redefined it. Because what is a challenge without someone brave enough to conquer it? What is a ruler when the laws they wrote collapse? Nothing. And nothing is what they became when the impossible broke under your hand. Picture the aftermath, dust rising, silence ringing, their eyes wide, their mouths open, their confidence dissolving in real time. Every brick of arrogance they stacked over the years fell back on their heads. Every rumor they whispered snapped back like a whip against their own throats. Every smirk they practiced cracked into fear. And the audience, the world, the bystanders, they saw everything. They saw the empire collapse. They saw the word impossible ripped apart and left as rubble. They saw your rise stamped into history in that exact moment. And here's the truth. Impossible was never about you. It was always about them. They needed you to believe it so they could stay above you. They needed you to tremble at it so they could laugh safely. They needed you to surrender to it so their power remained unquestioned. But you didn't tremble. You didn't surrender. You didn't stop. You walked straight through it, and the illusion shattered. Now when they whisper, impossible, the word tastes different. It tastes bitter. It tastes broken. It carries the echo of their own doubt. And every time they say it, they remember your face, your presence, your aura tearing it apart. They can't weaponize it anymore. Not against you. Not against anyone who saw you do it. The collapse of the impossible wasn't just a victory. It was a revolution. And revolutions don't fade. You dominated the impossible, and in doing so, you made the impossible bow to your name. Domination isn't complete until the collapse is witnessed. Private defeats don't linger. Quiet corrections don't sting. But being exposed in public, that leaves a mark. And that's what your enemies felt the moment the impossible fell, apart in front of eyes that once cheered for them. They weren't just wrong, they were revealed. Their arrogance wasn't just cracked, it was broadcast. The theater they built to mock you became their stage, and every audience member carried the memory like a scar. Think about it. They had trained people to laugh at your name, to smirk when you entered, to treat you as a punchline in their endless performance. They loved the crowd. They lived for it. Their power wasn't in truth, it was in perception. And perception is fragile. All it takes is one tremor, one undeniable moment, and the entire narrative flips. That tremor was you. That moment was the collapse. And perception, once rewritten, can never return to what it was. Picture their faces as silence took the room hostage. The ones who shouted the loudest suddenly mute. The ones who rolled their eyes now avoiding contact. The ones who pretended loyalty now shifting uncomfortably in their seats, looking for exits that no longer existed. Public exposure is heavier than any judgment because it's not about what's said, it's about what's seen. And the world saw, the crowd saw, their allies saw, and worst of all, they saw themselves, unmasked, small, powerless. The impact doesn't fade, it grows, because people replay the moment in their minds. They whisper about it in hallways. They bring it up in conversations your enemies aren't invited to anymore. Every time their names surface, so does the memory of their collapse. They can't run from it. They can't rewrite it. They can't erase it. This moment leaves a permanent mark on the story, and your enemies are branded forever. And you didn't need to mock them. You didn't need to clap or gloat. The shift, the stares, the contrast, that was enough. You simply stood there, aura unshaken, and the contrast between your calm and their reaction wrote the story on its own. The crowd didn't cheer for you because you demanded it. They cheered because reality left them no other choice. And that's what unsettles your enemies the most. That the public saw it for themselves. That the truth didn't need your voice. It spoke louder without you. Now every room they walk into carries echoes of that night. Every conversation is laced with hesitation. Every alliance is clouded by doubt. They are shadows walking through their own stage, haunted by the memory of laughter that turned against them. And the deeper truth, public exposure wasn't punishment, it was prophecy. The world finally saw what was always true. They were noise, and you were inevitability. The collapse of your enemies would have been enough. Their arrogance exposed, their influence challenged, their whispers turned into evidence. But destiny didn't stop there, because when truth speaks in public, power listens. And what followed was something they never predicted. Recognition, not from the crowd that once mocked you, not from the ones who sat silent, but from those they respected, the very figures they looked up to in private, the very names they quoted like guidance. Those names now nod in your direction. This is the part that unsettles them. For years, your enemies sought approval. They waited for acknowledgement from higher forces, from those with influence, from those whose voices echoed louder than theirs. They chased handshakes. They paid for attention. They lived for validation that never truly belonged to them. And now, those very powers, those titans, shift their gaze past them and lock on to you. It's not charity. It's not coincidence. It's gravity. Power respects truth, and truth chose you. Do you feel it? The way the atmosphere changes when recognition enters the room. Chairs swivel, conversations pause, eyes turn. Your name isn't whispered anymore, it's declared. The silence you held is now thunder, and even the untouchables, the so-called giants, hear it. They nod, they acknowledge, they align. And with every nod, your enemies fade further, diminished in a light they can't influence. Recognition isn't applause, it's confirmation. It's the moment the world says, this one is undeniable. And that moment is irreversible. No rumor can undo it. No smear can erase it. No noise can drown it. Recognition once earned is carved into stone. And now that stone carries your name. Imagine how it affects them. The same ones who mocked you now watch as figures. They respected speak your name with honor. The same ones who thought you'd remain. Forgotten now see rooms lean in when you arrive. They can't stop it. They can't compete with it. They can't even explain it. Because recognition doesn't follow noise. It follows aura. And your aura shifted the balance until even power itself had to acknowledge it. And you don't gloat. You don't chase it. You don't need to. Recognition came to you because you embodied inevitability. Because you endured what they couldn't, survived what they wouldn't, and stood where they faltered. Recognition is destiny nodding in your direction, saying, you weren't just cleared, you were crowned. That crown doesn't sit on their heads anymore. It sits on yours, and every time they look up, they see it gleaming. A reminder that the game they thought they controlled was never theirs to begin with. Recognition is irreversible, and now it belongs to you. The collapse didn't end on the stage. That was only the spark. What followed was a ripple, doubt seeping into every corner of their lives. Do you see it? The way their once boastful voices now falter in conversations. The way their allies hesitate, unsure of trust. That's doubt at work. And it doesn't come from you shouting. It comes from silence, from inevitability, from the verdict already written in their minds. They used to gather in circles, confident, laughing, certain that their alliances were unbreakable. Now those same circles feel fragile. Every glance feels uncertain. Every pause feels heavy. Every whisper feels like it could hold hidden agendas. They don't know who's still loyal. They don't know which smile is real and which one hides ulterior motives. And that uncertainty weighs on them more than any defeat ever could. Doubt is the tax of arrogance. And right now, they are paying with interest. They replay the collapse in their heads at night, restless, haunted by the silence that used to belong to you. They scroll through conversations that don't include them anymore. They check names they once dismissed, desperate for reassurance they can't find. They can't admit it, but they feel watched by truth, by exposure, by the inevitability of their own fragility. And the best part, you don't need to lift a finger. You don't need to send threats. You don't need to chase them. Their own minds are the battlefield now. Every time they hear your name, their hearts skip. Every time they sense your aura, their confidence falters. Every time they try to gather courage, it collapses under the weight of memory. They aren't struggling against you anymore. They're struggling with their own doubts, their own mistakes, their own collapse replaying on loop. Imagine the realization that their greatest obstacle isn't even a person. It's their own uncertainty. They can't fully trust allies. They can't trust shadows. They can't even trust silence, because silence, the very thing they once mocked, now belongs to you. It follows them, lingers, reminds them. You didn't just dominate the impossible. You unsettled their certainty, rewired their confidence, and turned their arrogance into a burden they can't shake. They don't say it out loud, but they know the truth. Their fall isn't coming. It already happened. They're just stuck in the echo of it. Collapse left them shaken. Her recognition stripped their illusion. But destiny wanted to make the message final, and so protection arrived. Not requested, not begged for, not bought, but undeniable. Out of nowhere, someone stood. Someone with presence heavy enough to bend the room. With a voice commanding enough to silence a crowd. With authority that made every doubter shrink back. They didn't rise for applause. They didn't rise for spectacle. They rose for you. And in that moment, everything changed. Do you feel the weight of that? Vindication was already yours. Recognition was already yours. But this was different. This was loyalty manifesting without chains, without deals, without payment. It was proof that you're not standing alone anymore. It was proof that destiny itself sends protectors when the aura becomes too strong for enemies to bear, and the enemies who once laughed at your silence. They froze, because protection isn't a whisper, it's a declaration. It's the universe saying, this one is untouchable. Picture the scene, a table full of smug faces, all ready to rehearse their old script, when suddenly one voice cut through the noise. Not this one. The room fell silent. Their confidence faltered. Their shoulders slumped. Their smirks disappeared. And for the first time, they understood. You weren't just cleared. You weren't just recognized. You were shielded. And shields like that don't fade. They strengthen. And here's what unsettles them most. Once one protector appears, others follow. Once one figure stands, more rise. The momentum of loyalty multiplies. Now every room feels unpredictable to them. Every silence feels significant. Every corner feels like it could hold another defender ready to step forward. They can't move without feeling watched by forces beyond their control. This is where domination transforms into destiny. You're no longer fighting for survival. You're no longer clawing against impossible walls. The impossible has already collapsed. The verdict has already been written. Recognition has already crowned you. And now, protection has sealed you. They cannot touch your story again. Not with lies, not with rumors, not with arrogance. Because the world won't allow it. The shield has been drawn. And you don't need to ask who they are. You don't need to thank them. You don't need to count them. Protectors appear where inevitability walks, and inevitability belongs to you. Your aura shook the earth. Your silence shattered arrogance. Your rise rewrote the impossible. And now, the final image is carved into time. You surrounded, defended, enthroned, not by force, but by destiny itself. Their influence crumbled. Their confidence faltered. Their empire collapsed. And your name, untouchable, eternal, written into history tonight.